welcome to the Climate Initiative's resource on climate careers. I'm Dr. Molly Cashion, and for the past 6 months, I have been a fellow at the Climate Initiative, working through the Mortgage Accelerator program to put together this packet of resources for those interested in climate careers. So what you'll find here is a general overview of what is a climate career. And honestly, it can be anything. It's probably not what you thought of before. It's not just a climate scientist. It could be a wildland firefighter. It could be an economist. It could be an administrative specialist. There's a lot of different ways to be involved in the climate industry. So yeah, I'm hoping to open up your eyes to all of those possibilities through this resource. But I think my favorite part about this project was that I got to interview several folks that are in climate careers now. I think most of them are early career professionals, and their stories are insightful and amazing. And so I hope you get a chance to listen to those interviews that are part of this packet. And then finally, at the end of the packet, I also included a guide for you to conduct your own informational interview about a climate career. I used my same 4 questions that I asked everybody, but what I found in my own career is that it's really a who you know world, and you can make connections pretty easily if you just start reaching out, and an informational interview is a great way to do that. So if you see somebody working in the job that you like or you are curious about, email them and reach out to them and see if you can do an informational interview to get more information to see how you might, aim your career in that direction. I asked all my interviewees these same 4 questions, and you might be asking yourself, well, Molly, who are you? You're talking about climate careers. What are you now? So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself answering these same 4 questions. So number 1, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own career and how it relates to climate change. So as a fellow, it obviously relates to climate change because I'm doing climate education pretty directly, but I also work full-time for Arizona State University as the senior program manager for the Sustainability Teachers Academies. And there we do professional development for K through 12 teachers in sustainability and futures-oriented sciences. So climate is like a piece of what I do. Because in sustainability, it's like there are the 3 pillars: environment, society, and economy. But one of the largest problems that we're facing is climate change. So climate change naturally comes up in a lot of the education that I do. For example, I've been working for the past 7 years with the Philadelphia Public School District about conducting workshops on climate justice and some of the interconnected issues and how that will affect Philadelphia and the students and the communities there. So question number 2 is, how did I get in my career? And so I always really loved nature. I'm a nature girly, and I grew up, canoeing and catching frogs and stuff in Tennessee. And because of that, I went to college and I studied biology. But when I got out, I really struggled to find a career with an undergraduate degree in biology. And I incorrectly, by the way, assumed that you had to have advanced degrees in order to be in the field of biology. But that's not true. So don't let anyone tell you that. There are plenty of careers that you can get in with only an undergrad. So I'm a victim of being told that you have to have higher education degrees to make a difference. But I did believe that for a very long time, which is why I now have an advanced degree. I was really struggling after I graduated from college, figuring out what to do, because I knew I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to do something, but I didn't really even know what my skill set was. It felt like I had a lot of knowledge and no skills. Not of undergrad, to be honest. And I ended up getting a paralegal certificate and working for an environmental law firm called the Southern Environmental Law Center. It was a great job. I worked in the Birmingham, Alabama office, and I loved it. The work is really difficult working in environmental law because you see a lot of environmental degradation, but you also see a lot of environmental racism, especially in the South, which really solidified that interconnection that we have between ourselves and the world around us. So because of that, I wanted to go to Arizona State University for my master's in sustainability, because sustainability specifically looks at that intersection of environment, society, and economy. And I was like, that's what I'm interested in. That's what I want to do. So when I got my master's, I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do with that. I think my biggest, how did you get into your career? I don't know. It was just a lot of stumbling blocks of, well, maybe I'll try this, and this seems like it could work. But one of the things that I always knew is that I always wanted to be an educator, because working for the law firm, it felt to me like by the time I got to the legal field, it felt too late. We couldn't fix the problems because the problems start so much earlier. And so that's why I wanted to get into K-12 education. So after I got my master's, I started working immediately at ASU. So I started working with the Teachers Academy as a fellow. in 9 years ago, and then I got hired on full time 8 years ago. So I've spent the last 8 years doing sustainability education for ASU, which is the dream. And part of that was that I got to get my doctorate of education as I was working, and that was a great thing. I drank the Kool-Aid pretty hard at ASU because as a staff person, you get free tuition, and so I was able to take advantage of that, and now I'm an actor. My third question is, what challenges have I faced and how did I overcome them? Well, one of the big ones is that I always felt like I needed more education. And I did go down the path of getting more education. I got probably the most education, and I didn't really need that. So I think that was a myth that I kind of fed into and believed. So that was kind of a challenge because I think it really speaks to my own feeling of not being good enough. And so I think that that's a challenge that I've heard a lot from my colleagues, is just this feeling of I'm not good enough. And I tried to fill that hole with education, and guess what? It's still there. Turns out that doesn't fix it. So that was a challenge in trying to determine what was enough, especially because when we're working in the climate and sustainability fields, it feels like it's never enough anyways. So finding enough was very, very difficult for me, and is something that I had to work towards, doing a lot of self-care and work outside of work and figuring out that. And there's this quote by the Tao Te Ching that's, "You'll never have enough unless you know what enough is." And I think that that's really true for me. I also feel like when it comes to more systemic issues, I've definitely felt like I had to work harder as a woman in academia in order to prove that I know things. I think that also speaks to me getting my doctorate. So yeah, I do feel like I've had to work a lot harder than some of my male counterpoints. Another thing that's kind of surprisingly a challenge for me working in academia was looking very young. I have looked exactly the same for the past like 15 years. And so I remember when I first started working for the Teachers Academy, I was in my like late 20s, and people would ask me if I was the intern all the time. And I'm like, hello, I'm the program manager. So I think that that was a challenge. I don't know. I think overcoming that, I had an interview with a wildland firefighter earlier today, and she talked a lot about mental fortitude and knowing yourself. And I think that that's something that has helped me overcome all of these challenges, is just finding out and being comfortable with who I am and what I have to offer. And so I think that having the mental fortitude and understanding my own identity, I've done a lot of identity work, especially since I've worked a lot in the justice space. And I think that that's helped me to overcome some of these challenges. So the imposter syndrome and feeling like I'm not good enough. A lot of them, I think, the challenges that I have personally faced are a lot of internal challenges because I've been given a lot of opportunities as well. And so a lot of opportunities I didn't take too. So always take opportunities. And the final question that I asked my interviewees was, given the sometimes discouraging aspect of working in climate, what gives you hope? So what gives me hope? So I've been working in the environmental field and the climate field for about 15 years, and not every day is a good day. I remember a few years ago, somebody asked this question when I was on a panel, and I said, I have no hope, because that's how I felt at the time. I was like, I don't have any hope, and I have a lot of dark humor, which is true. But I think the thing that gives me the most hope are people, which is kind of ironic because when I first got into environmentalism and sustainability, I always felt like people were the problem, which, we are the cause of anthropogenic climate change, right? But as I've started reprioritizing my work to really deepen and develop relationships and focus on relationships, it's changed my perspective a lot on climate and on my general outlook of life. And I feel like that's what gives me hope. It's connecting with people, because I think when we look systemically at some of the issues that we're facing, environmental degradation, environmental injustice, these problems, they continue because we dehumanize people. We take people out of the equation. And so I think to rehumanize and to really spend time connecting with yourselves and each other and the world around us, like, that's what gives me hope. And it's challenging to make time for those things. But I think that especially in the last 3 or 4 years or so, in reprioritizing relationships over outcomes, I have seen that I feel more hopeful, less pessimistic. So that is the long answer as to who I am. And so I'm really glad you're here. I'm so happy that you're interested in a career in the climate sector. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or want any connections. I feel like I've benefited a lot from the connections that I've made in my life, and that's one of the challenges that I've seen, especially with some of the younger folks coming up now, is that there's a different kind of, like, there's a lack of connection. So if you don't know anyone in the climate industry, sometimes it's harder or it feels more intimidating to get involved. But I'm leaving my email address in the resource, so don't hesitate to reach out to me or reach out to anyone at the Climate Initiative, because one of the things I found about working at the Climate Initiative is that we're here to serve you, educators and youth. And so if you need something, reach out. We're all real people and we all want to help. So thank you and enjoy the resource.